Crime Curious is a true crime podcast that takes an in-depth look into real cases through the lens of a trained investigator and former prosecutor turned judge.
If you are sensitive to expletives, anatomical descriptions, and accurate descriptions of crime scenes, this podcast may not be suitable for you.
Welcome to Crime Curious. I'm Charnell, and in the studio with me today is special guest Wes.
How you doing?
Megan is out with a family situation right now, so I brought in Wes, who is literally back by popular demand. Y'all loved him.
Glad to be back. I'm tickled.
Yes, so we're happy to have you here. And this is a little bit of a different episode because we do have on the phone a special guest. We have a Michigan Department of Corrections officer and author. James is on the line with us today. If you'd like to pop in and say hi, James.
Hi, how are y'all doing?
Hopefully they're doing fabulous because they are listening to Crime Curious. So there's a little tradition, James, that we have to do that was started basically by our lovely listeners sending us some real weird shit. But we have started this tradition where we shake. I'm currently holding raccoon penis bones in my hands, and I shake that before each episode for good luck. And Wes is holding a kangaroo scrotum that is filled with crystals, yes. Penises. Yes. So it's just been, it's turned into kind of a funny tradition that we do here. And Megan and I have discovered when we don't do it, things go wrong. Stuff doesn't get recorded the way it's supposed to. And so, yeah, we definitely make sure that we shake our gree-gree before every episode just to set it off with the best juju. So... All right. We really appreciate you taking the time to be on today. As I was saying before we hit the record button, so often when we end our cases, it's either ended with, okay, and this is an unsolved case and this person, a murderer, is still out there. Or we're like, and the judge sent the bad guy to prison. But then we don't talk about the people that have to deal with these bad guys, with the murderers that we talk about, every episode, that you still have, they're still alive. They still have to be dealt with by another human being on a daily basis. And I don't think that we raise enough awareness or draw enough attention to that, or really,
oh, definitely. Yeah, we don't
bring awareness of what is it like to then be the person who has to have the daily interactions with these people. So Tell us about yourself. How did you get into the Michigan Department of Corrections? How did this all unfold for you?
Well, the first thing I have to say is, because we'll be talking about it, I have to put a disclaimer out there that anything I say, whatever opinions I may have, does not necessarily reflect that of the department. Sure. So all my opinions that I say here are my own.
Yep.
A disclaimer I just put out there. So, I've always been interested in crime. I've always been an avid reader of it, crime fiction, true crime. And so I just kind of gravitated toward learning more about that type of life. And so I ended up going to college. I was majoring in criminal justice because I always wanted to be a cop. And then I ended up applying for a job as an officer with the Michigan Department of Corrections. So I kind of put college on, at that time I put it on hiatus, which means I wasn't ready to say I dropped out. And I applied. I went through the academy. It was an 8-week academy. It was probably some of the best and worst times I've had. The PT could get annoying, but then our platoon was so small, we actually were really close with each other and stuff. So it was kind of like we were our own little club, really. And then from there, I went and I worked they assigned me a prison to work at. I can't really say which one it is.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been there for almost 8 years now.
Wow.
Oh, great. What do you think, what's the biggest challenge that you face in your job?
I'd say the biggest challenge is kind of the mental strong will, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
It's being able to go in there and not let the place get to you so much. I mean, obviously, you're in a prison, so you're dealing with largely a negative atmosphere. You know, you're dealing with hundreds of individuals that are in prison, some of them for many years. Many of them will not go home. Many of them have been in there a long time already. You know, it's a high stress environment. You really don't know what's going to happen when you go in there. I mean, you know, my first day going in there, I was scared.
Sure.
But after my first day, I was fine. Like I walked in, I said, okay, whatever happens, I will deal with it. It's always in the back of your head that something can happen, but you just kind of learn to treat it like a switch. Like
I agree
I've
with
spent
that.
so many times. Yeah, I've spent so many times where I can sit in we call them housing units. I can sit in a housing unit with my partner, and we can literally spend, aside from doing our duties, we can spend hours just, talking about whatever topic, sports, movies, politics, whatever we want to talk about. And sometimes we can go the whole day and just have pleasant conversation, doing our jobs. And other times you just hear that call on the radio. We got to fight somewhere.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And the switch turns on. And you say, okay, I'm going, I'll say to my partner, hey, I'm out. Meaning I'm going to respond. Or he might say it first. Whoever gets out the unit first.
Right.
One has to stay.
Right.
And honestly, it's, those situations are tense. You don't know what you're going into. But what's interesting about that is, and I'd say that's probably one of the best things of working there, is that when you're, there's so many different personalities that wear the black and gray. You're not going to get along with everybody.
Right.
No, it's almost impossible.
Mm-hmm.
Right. You're not going to get along with everybody. There's some people you're just not going to like. There's some people that they're going to be your best friends. And there's some that are just going to be, man, I wouldn't even say hello to them on the street.
Right.
But when it comes down to something's going down, we forget about that immediately. And it's go time.
Yeah. And that's something we always stressed in law enforcement also is I don't give a shit if you like this guy or not. When it comes down to it, you back each other up.
Right, exactly. Because at the end of the day, and I stress this to some new guys. I tell them, I said, listen, you can enforce whatever rules you want. You can find as much stuff as you want. You can talk to, you can choose how you'll interact with the prisoners. However you wish, go ahead. But when it comes down to it, if there's a fight or somebody's getting hurt and you freeze, a lot of that goes out the window.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Definitely.
Right.
At that point, I don't care how many guys you wrote misconduct reports on. If you froze when I was getting hurt, I have nothing for you.
Right.
That's how you remember other officers. If they choke or don't respond, that's what they become known for.
Right. And you just, after a certain amount of situations, you just become used to a particular role. So, okay, a fight goes down in another unit. You hear it on the radio, you respond, you run to that incident. Immediately you assess what one role you have to do. You have one job, and you have to figure out immediately what job that is.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So, right. So I run into a fight. Okay. By the time I get there, the two inmates are on the ground. They were told to get on the ground. Okay. I go, I put handcuffs on one of them. Another officer comes, put handcuffs on the other guy. Other officers come in, they assess the situation, look around, and watch the other prisoners that are in the area.
Yep.
Everybody has one job to do.
Yep.
If you tase them, you don't cuff them.
Mm-hmm.
You keep the taser on. If you cuff them, then you can escort them. Or one of the other officers will say, okay, I got him. You stay and whatever, deal with whatever you got to deal with, and it's very coordinated. And, so you accept that things can happen. And you just, and you prepare, eventually after a while, it kind of becomes like second nature to you.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
I liked what you said about a switch, because it's almost like you flick a switch. Like you can be, talking and joking and then shit goes down. And it's just like that, you flick a switch and boom, you're on.
Right, exactly. Do you, do you have a lot of contact with the, the people that you're, with the prisoners, with like the unit? Just kind of explain for me. Do you just have like a certain block that you're in charge of with your partner each day?
Well, it depends on which officer. I mean, there's so many different areas of a prison that an officer will work. The officer, like the most popular ones are the housing units and the yard areas.
Mm-hmm.
But you'll have officers that work up front in control centers. You'll have officers that'll, monitor the visiting room, that will deal with, the general public.
Sure.
And you'll have officers that will work buildings where they have the programs and the infirmary, the kitchens, or we call them the chow halls. So there's always an officer around.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
Go
ahead.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Nope. Go ahead.
And the primary job anywhere is custody and security.
Mm-hmm.
Though you may have certain differences in what you need to do to ensure the security of the area that you're working in. Where you might have to look, if you have to search prisoners, or if you have to respond to certain situations, and depending on where you work, it's all relatively the same. You're making sure that everybody's safe and secure, whether they're yourself, partners, custody staff, state workers, staff, or the general public. They come in. So yeah, I mean, I have preferred areas that I like to work in. I like to work with a lot of the people that are, we call them non-custody, because it's, I work and I associate with officers all day, so it's nice for me to talk to other state workers that are not necessarily officers to kind of get like a perspective on how their jobs are.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That makes sense. Well, the reason I had asked that question is because I often wonder, is as a corrections officer, do you guys know what they're in for? And do you ever feel conflicted about, like, personality wise, I get along with this person. Like, I can't believe that they're in for that crime. And like, I just wondered how that can kind of conflict, just being humans, and humans have a natural, ability to want to connect with one another. And so I've always been curious about what that must be like in a prison environment. It's a whole different world in there, and so, well, of course, you're in it every day, but, other people might not realize, like, it is an entirely different hierarchy of systems in there. It's a totally different world. And so I was curious if you've ever found yourself like, man, that dude's pretty cool. I can't believe he's in here for, this, or if you're just like, try to maybe stay standoffish a little bit, from connecting with the prisoners or things like that. Those are just some of these people that we cover on the podcast. I'm always like, damn, I wonder what they were like when they went to prison. Right. Were they a pain in the ass for everybody, or were they okay? I just definitely hit my microphone with my water bottle. Sorry about that.
I forgive you.
Thank you. So gracious.
Well, to kind of jump in there, we have a guy that we sent on a homicide, and talking to some guys from DOC, they're like, he is the nicest guy in the world. Helpful, one of our best inmates. And you'll hear that a lot.
Yeah.
And especially like with some, you will. Like, we had another guy that was in for a homicide, and he was just polite and didn't want to leave. we had him in our jail, and he's
Wow.
like, "Can I just stay here?"
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of the confliction of it all, because I think I was saying in a previous episode we recorded today, we're never just all one thing, so like you can be a murderer and also like donate to a children's school or something, like
Right.
it's very fascinating how humans are. And I just always wondered like how that might be for a worker, that if you work in the same unit, the same area every day, and you get to know all of these people, you're like, man, that's the gravity of it, of like, you will probably never see the outside world again and take and participate in it. But like in here, we're really chill with each other and we can get along, that I just wondered, does that weigh on you? Is that all a part of it, of that switch,
Just being around these individuals.
Yeah.
It can. I mean, we do have access to any individual that is incarcerated in a Michigan prison. You can actually there's a public website where you can look up their name and find them and see what exactly their felony convictions were.
Yep.
I mean, it won't say, for those that are not aware, it won't say they robbed, somebody's grandmother. It'll just say armed robbery or something like that.
Yep.
I have used it before. And so the place I work at, we have all kinds. I mean, we have guys that are in there because they, have drinking problems and they were driving, and we have guys in there that have killed people.
Mm-hmm.
And me personally, I think it depends on the officer. Some officers, I tell them, if you're the type of person that will hold it against them, I recommend you don't look up what these guys are in for.
Absolutely.
I'm able to compartmentalize because most of the public world can say, okay, Joe Schmo killed some guy. He's a horrible person. Hope he spends the rest of his life in prison. I hope I never see him in the world. He's a scumbag. But us, if we meet Joe Schmo, we have to realize like we're not like the rest of the people that can think about the victim. Because we're dealing with the perpetrator,
right?
And
exactly.
so we can't really treat him like he's whatever, like
right.
he's
right.
the scum of the earth. Because at the end of the day, respect is currency in the prison.
Yeah.
Me, when I go in there, when I go in there, if I don't know their name, I'll address them as sir, or good sir, how you doing today? I talk to them with the utmost respect.
Yep.
And and if I've known for a while, but Smith, Johnson, how you doing today?
Mm-hmm.
Things of that nature. And I just I'm always aware of the fact that they are in here for a reason, and that some of them are very violent. And you just I don't know, you can talk to them like regular people, but you have to understand, like, this person cannot be your friend.
Right.
Like they're never gonna be your buddy.
Yep.
You can have a conversation with them. Yeah, I saw that new Avengers movie. It was great.
Yeah.
Yeah, they had us see it in the unit. Yeah. Iron Man was awesome.
Yeah. Right.
But
you have to treat them like a human. I mean, what you're describing just really sounds like it is my job to still treat them like a human, because at the end of the day, no matter what they did, they are still human. But
they are going home.
Right. Yep.
Most of them are going home one day.
Mm-hmm.
And I have met a couple guys that I had seen in prison. But when it comes up, so when I go in there, I understand I have a certain amount of authority. And I understand that my authority extends only to within the walls of the prison, and that out there in the world, I don't have authority over you. You don't have authority over me.
Right.
We're just two regular people.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember that when I see these guys around, I say, okay, I'm not going to say, you're whatever, you deserve every bad thing that happens to you. No, I talk to you with respect. If I have to enforce a rule on you, I'll enforce a rule on you. And I'll try to give you as much respect as I can about that without, being, kissing your butt and all that. I'm trying not to curse.
Oh yeah, you can curse
you'll be
here.
okay if you'd like to. Yes.
It's hard because I speak the prison language.
Go for it.
We understand. Yep.
Now, do you find, and I've seen it with our jail, I've seen it with officers who they almost see them as their friends, and that becomes definitely a safety issue or a liability?
It can be. That's why there's always a line that you cannot cross with them.
Right. I agree.
And it can be difficult sometimes because a lot of these guys will show their better traits.
Of course.
Or some of them are just, sometimes they are genuinely nice guys.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you have to understand, like, there's your role and there's theirs. It's nothing personal.
Right.
And if you want to make friends, you have plenty of staff members that you can become friends with.
Right.
Just I've seen a lot of stories where officers have gotten caught up with guys that that have used them.
Oh,
and
sure.
so I always keep that in the back of my head. Like I tell newer officers, I said, you kind of have to watch some of these guys differently. Like a lot of these guys, like, yeah, I mean, they're all capable of getting into a fight or getting high or getting hurt or hurting you. Yes. But once you kind of come to know some of them, you watch them in different ways.
Right.
Okay,
so
that makes sense.
You'll watch this guy that's acting like a thug and is being a jerk. Okay, so he might cause a disturbance. He might get into a fight. He might smoke some dope and you have to resuscitate him or whatever.
Right.
But then you see this other guy that's been in prison for 20 years and he's always been quiet and he's the unit porter and he's whatever and he's a nice guy, he's funny, does his job. And you think, wow, you got to watch that guy differently.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
Yeah, he's probably not going to go, or well, he could, but you're kind of watching to see what he's going to say to you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's happened to me a couple times where, I've known some of these guys for years. And sometimes they'll say, hey, Michael, can you do me a favor? I was like, well, what kind of favor?
What are we asking?
Right. Like, I can tell you what the weather is today.
Right. You need to call health care because you have a headache?
Right.
Oh, can you go on, I'm looking for my brother. I think he's incarcerated. Can you find out what prison he's in? No, I can't do that.
Right.
Oh, you really can't do that? I won't tell.
Yeah.
No.
Right.
I'm not going to look up your brother on whatever, find what prison he's in. You can find out through your family or whatever.
Right.
Don't
Yep.
ask me for that. And
there's other avenues, yeah.
Right. And that's where it is. And it's just funny because some of these guys, you have to be careful because some of them have been in prison for so long that a few of them get so affected by it. They think that because you're not barking at them, that you may say, good morning, Johnson. How you doing today? And they might think you're their friend now.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because they're so
just
used to
you're treating them like a human.
Oh. And a lot of female employees have had trouble with that because a lot of these guys, again, not everybody, but some of them have that mentality where because, they may smile and say good morning, he thinks that they're
something, yeah.
Yep, that they're attracted to him.
Yes.
Trust me,
yes.
that happens on the outside too. Yep, I can see how that would be a huge problem. I just think that it would be really difficult to know when just to be cautious to not get caught up in like possible manipulation tactics as well, and using the fact that you do have to treat them like they're human and kindly, essentially, because first of all, if you went in there every single day and treated them like you were a dick, you're going to create your own reality in that every day for you is going to suck because they're going to do what they can to get back at you for treating them like that. You know, I mean, what you put out is what you get back. And so you very much, I mean, I don't know how many sex offenders that I've had interviews that I've, been investigating, and I know what they are capable of, but I have to sit here and talk.
Play nice.
Yeah, you do. You have to really play nice with them and let them think that you're their friend, right? To keep the peace, to go through your case, what you need to do, and I imagine for you, sometimes it can be very much the same way of just like, I'm going to be respectful here, even if you're triggering me a bit, because we got to get along. Like at the end of the day, I got to get to the end of my shift and be able to go home safely, that could just be hard.
Right. And that's why, cause again, I deal with guys that they will get hostile and they'll say something sideways. And, me, I was okay with I was okay the way, F you. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right.
That's how you feel, as you're walking out the door, as you're walking away from me. Right. Oh, okay.
Yep.
Yeah. I'll think about that when I go home tonight.
Right. Well, that's just it. Like, you can't take it personal.
But some guys do, correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, I cops and corrections officers, there are guys that everything is a personal attack, or they so much look down on these people, it's hard for them to do their job efficiently.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and a lot of that's insecurity. There are certain officers that can be insecure, and they, I tell them, I said, I don't really care about the inmates respecting me because I'm just not too concerned about that. Like I don't care if you respect me, but if I have to enforce a rule, you're going to do it if it's a reasonable order. Right. And if you refuse, then there's going to be a repercussion for that.
Right. There's a protocol for it. It really has nothing to do with you personally. It's that we're going to follow policy and protocol here. And so this, and they kind of, I would imagine, make the determination of what path and what policy and protocol you follow.
Right.
Based on their interactions.
Right. And I tell people, like, don't take it personal. Like, when if you go in there and somebody calls you a name or whatever, they usually fall within one of three different types of people. Either they are some new young kid that's very young, 18, 19, 20. He's in prison. He thinks it's funny, and he just hasn't grown up yet. He's got a lot of growing up to do. He's just trying to impress his buddies and impress whoever in the prison. And then there's some guys that typically wouldn't say anything. They're just having a particularly a bad day. Yeah. And it's like, okay, he's probably just having a bad day. Never had a problem with him before. Having a rough time. And then there's just a lot of guys that, the guy's been in prison, back to prison 5 or 6 times.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, now, and I'm not saying, I'm not judging anybody's worth, but I'm not going to, a guy like that seems to be making the same mistakes 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times in a row.
Right. Habitual.
I mean, I'm constantly working on bettering and building myself every single day. So I'm more secure in myself. I'm not too worried about this guy saying I'm, whatever, you're this, you're that. It's like, you don't even know me, dude.
Yep.
And
Exactly.
Right. And then you got to look at his mentality because, I've guys that, I was working in one area. I had to fire one guy one time from his job because he kept coming into work drunk or coming in late. Mm-hmm. I said, "You're fired," and he said, I told him, "Hey man, you're fired. It is what it is. You got to go." He's like, "Why are you talking to me like that? Why are you talking to me like that?" And I said, and I thought about that. I was like, this guy just got fired from his job because he was walking in at 7 a.m. drunk. And his problem, the battle he's choosing to fight, is that he didn't like that I told him he had to leave the workplace. Not that,
not
not
that
the
he
fact
was
he's
fired.
showing up drunk
right.
at 7 o'clock in the morning.
Right. Like you're dealing with guys that have that mindset. Because you realize that a lot of these guys, the reason they're in prison is not because of what they did, it's because of how they think.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes,
that's true.
exactly.
You know, and
Yeah.
that's one of the things when I see some guys, you can kind of tell, like, I mean, I met some guys, you have conversations with some guys. I've met some dudes that have had some pretty serious charges, and we talk, and they seem, again, you never know, but they seem genuinely remorseful.
Yeah.
They seem to have really broken that mentality that put them in prison, and it's like,
like they've learned the lesson. The lesson has and they're evolving beyond it.
Or
right,
and you taking responsibility for their actions.
Right. Or and then you can see others where they're just not ready.
Right.
They're just not ready,
and they'll
it's
be
like,
back.
and right, and that's why I say it's like, it's not because you stole a car that you're going to be, that you're going to be staying in prison. It's not because you robbed a bank that you're going to stay in prison. It's because of the way that you're not changing your mentality.
Right.
I won't hold against you whatever you did to get put in jail. No, I won't hold that against you. Okay, you robbed the liquor store. Okay, it doesn't make you the devil.
Right.
But you're walking around, as soon as you get a job, you screw it up, or you're using it as a way to steal,
mm-hmm.
or you're getting in the conflict with the
mm-hmm.
supervisor, whether it's an officer or whoever. You're argumentative. It's like, with all due respect, they don't get paid a whole lot with the jobs. Because I work in a lot of areas where I see the inmates working jobs, but the way that they act is like, this is the easiest job you're ever going to have, bro.
Right.
Exactly. You woke up and we told you you're going to be working here today.
Right. Exactly.
And a lot of you guys can't do that.
Yeah.
Now, maybe part of it is just because you were never taught that,
Right.
But it's like, I got to tell you, dude, it's not going to be easier when you get out of here.
No.
Right.
Well, and especially...
It's not going to be easier.
I think that people get wrapped up. I was recently having this conversation with I have 4 teenage boys, and we were having a conversation about like low vibrational people, right? Like people that just really bring the vibe down because they're the victim all the time of every circumstance.
Yeah.
And those are the people that refuse to evolve. They won't take accountability. They won't get out of that victim thinking and just elevate themselves, and I feel like that's like what you're describing of like, you can tell the difference of the people who have completely taken accountability. They've learned from their mistakes and they're elevating themselves, right? They're not operating as on such a low vibe now. And then you can tell the people that it's like, you'll be back in here because you can't handle this. Yeah. Like you're stuck in that victim mentality. It's never your fault. It's everybody else's. It was the officer that arrested you. It was the judge who put you here.
How many times on the street, if they wouldn't have arrested me, I would have been able to do this. Yes. I would have kept my job, or I wouldn't have lost my family.
Yep.
Never taken
Never.
accountability for what they did that got them there.
Yep. So I feel like that's kind of what you're describing of like, you can tell, you get, everything is energy, and you can feel that energy coming off from the people that are like legitimately have a chance when they get out and that they've learned from it, and the people who maybe haven't or have a hard time, they're going to have more lessons to learn.
Right.
I know one guy, I remember one guy, I can't say his name, but it was his second to last day before he was going home. He got a parole, and he was leaving within 48 hours.
Mm-hmm.
And he's in the dining room, and he's arguing with one of the food service workers, a regular employee, not prisoner, regular employee, over his food. And I told him, I said, dude, like, why are you arguing with them?
Right.
Well, because it's like, dude, you just said you're leaving in 2 days.
Right. In 48 hours, you're not even going to eat this food anymore.
Don't fuck it
Bro,
up.
In 48 hours, you can have a steak in your belly.
Right.
You're worried about you didn't like how your food was cooked.
Right. Exactly.
And he had actually had his parole held off for a while because he had gotten into a fight
Shit.
that I had to write him up for.
Yep.
And he said, Why'd you write that ticket on me? You got into a fight.
Right. Exactly.
You fought. So
Yes.
why did you? And,
It's not my
and then,
fault.
anyway, right. And then so later on, he has that situation. He gets out. He was still on parole, and he got involved in a robbery, and somebody died. And he hadn't been out a year.
Wow.
And now he's doing a considerable amount of time
Sure.
he's not in prison I work at, but he's doing a considerable amount of time. Like my children will probably be having children of their own by the time that he gets out.
Yeah.
And my
Yeah.
children are toddlers.
Talk about self-destructive personality traits.
And he's my age.
Yeah. Yeah.
Talk about parallel.
Yep.
And there are some people, and not just people in prison or people that we deal with as law enforcement, but like they always have to be right, and they're like they just have to have that battle.
It's like it's a personal violation to their soul if they aren't right.
Right.
And it's destructive. I mean, it just completely can unravel.
People.
It does. Yeah, it doesn't surprise me to see that self-sabotage, though. I do think that sometimes people panic, too, when they're about to get out and will create conflict just from their own anxiety of like, shit, I haven't been out on the outside in a long time. What's it going to be like, Sure,
it's got to be tough.
Yeah, and kind of create their own problems that way, too.
My theory on that has been just I don't think a lot of them have, a lot of these guys did not grow up with everything handed to them or anything handed to them.
Right.
So I believe a lot of it is an insecurity issue, the way that they are, and that they don't know what that feeling of accomplishment is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's a driving force.
Yep.
For everybody.
Right.
Like I said, I'm constantly looking for things to build myself and better myself every single day. And I have a long list of accomplishments. I feel very secure about myself.
Right.
So I don't let too many things that these guys say bother me.
Yeah.
But, a lot of them just haven't really done much in their time on the planet.
That's an excellent point. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And they come out of prison and come back into those same shitty situations, home life, not being able to get a job, friends they associate with.
Yep. So speaking of your accomplishments, I understand that you recently released a book. Yes.
That's actually true. I actually released my fourth book back in January.
Okay,
wow.
It was your fourth. I knew it wasn't your first, but I couldn't remember what we talked about. Okay, tell us about that journey.
So my story with that, it's funny. When I first started with the department, I didn't know where I was actually going to go. I didn't know if I was going to promote or use it as a stepping stone. And just as time goes by, I was there and I realized that I really didn't want to be I wanted to become a regular police officer out on the street, but just working there for so long, I realized I really didn't want to become one because of and the main reason is nothing against police, of course, but I've seen enough situations and enough hypothetical situations where if the use of force has to be needed, and it's drilled into us, the use of force. Like, did you use the adequate amount of force necessary to handle a situation? Did you use too much?
Mm-hmm.
Did you use not enough?
Mm-hmm.
And I just felt like, ironically, being a corrections officer, again, this is my opinion, being a corrections officer, I felt safer because I felt like there was less factors in this dangerous situation than there would be out in the street.
Yeah,
I agree with that.
For sure.
Yeah,
That's a very fair point. Yeah.
So there I am. But see, then I started having kids, and my goal was to go to first shift. So, which is, I'm working early in the morning and I get out in the afternoon. So I started to have kids, I'm building a family. So, and when you promote, sometimes they will send you to another shift.
Oh,
So
okay.
you promote to sergeant or lieutenant, and they'll say, "Hey, congratulations," but the only spot available is on midnight, so you have to go work midnight.
Right.
And so I said, "Well, I can't really promote up. I don't have a college degree, so there wasn't much open to me." So I started saying, "Okay, well, you know what? I'm going to be at this place for a while. I like this job. That's fine. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of look around and see what I can do just to build myself up as a person. Learn a language. Maybe I'll learn a language. Maybe I'll pick up a sport. Maybe I'll write a book."
There you go.
So
Uh-huh.
So I'd always been an avid reader, but I was never a writer. Like I'm not a child prodigy or anything like that. I haven't been writing since I was 2. I was 25 when I started doing this. And I said, "You know what? I want to write a book. I'm going to do this. I'm going to write a book." And I remember when I was a teenager, I actually did start writing one. That was one time I did start writing a book, but I never finished it. And I thought back about that. I thought back to that moment, and I said, "Okay, this time I'm going to finish this book."
Yeah.
But I thought it was going to be a one-off.
Mhm.
So I started writing the book, which would eventually be my debut novel, Ice Rising. And I realized I was going to turn it into a series. And then I had other ideas to write about as well. So I realized that for me, I had found what I never really, that one part of me that I felt was missing, which was what was my natural talent? What am I good at?
Mhm. You
So
found your higher
that is-
path.
Right.
Yes, exactly. And, I've been writing ever since then. It's been 5 years, and I've published 4 books now. I'm writing a 5th one. And, yeah, it's been an amazing journey.
Yeah, it sounds like it. And also, I love how you pointed out, I was not a writer.
Right.
Like, so many times, I think humans are held back by creating an identity with themselves of what they're not.
What they can't
And
do.
what they can't do, or what they are like, well, I'm really anxious, so I can't do this.
Right.
Right? Like, I love that you're like, I didn't identify as a writer, but I have now wrote 4 books, going on my 5th one, that goes to show people, like, you can literally, we're here to create. We're here to learn lessons, create, have a journey. There is nothing stopping you except for yourself.
Yeah, we're usually our own worst enemy.
We are all the time. So I love this for you, that you could recognize, like, shit, I want to do something that elevates myself, and I'm going to write a book. So let's give this a try. Tell us about the series. I really, really love this story, because I think it's just a great message for there are listeners right now that are going, I've really thought about doing this, that, or the other thing, and I've let fear, or I've let the fact that I'm not stop me.
Hold me back.
Mhm.
Yep.
Right. Well, of course. So the first book that I wrote was called Ice Rising. And I had no idea where I was going to go with this book, because all of my writing, I pretty much shoot from the hip. Even I don't know what's going to happen next.
Okay. Yep.
But Ice Rising tells the tale of this young man called Alexander Lincoln. Grows up in a rough area with a solid family, and being the oldest son, he's taught to protect those that he loves and stay off the street, which he does for a while until he's involved in a drive-by that claims the life of one of his friends. So he has a little bit of survivor's guilt, and he decides to join one of the gangs in town to protect those that he loves. But coupled with that is this own talent for business. He's got a great business mind. Could have been a CEO. Instead, he uses his intellect to further his criminal exploits and rise in power. So the first book of the series is his initial rise through the streets. He's learning how to survive out there. And then I actually wrote the second book, Ice Rising, which was actually the third book I wrote. But since we're on the subject of the series, I'll talk about that one first. And Ice Box was a total change in setting. So instead of being on the street, Ice is now behind the walls of prison.
Okay.
Oh.
And this is where my experience has made it very easy to write a book.
Right. Yes. That's good, though. They do say you should write what you know.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I tell my readers that it is in a different state. Just to again, because of our respect for the department, it's not, none of it takes place in Michigan or anything like that. Nothing
Right.
that can be reflective of the department or anything like that. But one of so anyway, Ice is, because that's his street name, Ice, hence the commonality of the titles. Ice ends up in prison. He has to do a little bit of time. His plan is to stay out of trouble, whittle the time away, get parole, get back to work, get back to the streets and get back to work. Well, the problem is that he gets contact from people on the outside who basically tell him, listen, you made a lot of money for us out here. Everybody's happy, but only a matter of time before somebody tries to replace you. So you have to figure out how to make some money while you're in there to keep them loyal to you. So now he's got that problem, and coupled with that is that he has enemies from the outside that he's now locked up with.
Yeah,
Okay.
right.
And, we've all probably had to try to avoid one or two people out there in the world. Imagine when you're locked up with them.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
And to talk about that book, one of my big things, because honestly, with my writing, I'm not like Dostoevsky or Charles Dickens, where everything in the book represents something. Like the green grass represents, the downfall of society, and the white picket fence resembles childhood trauma or whatever.
Right.
Oh, that's good, because I don't usually pick up on that shit.
Because that's like, I never, you read that and you go, I never would have got that.
Right.
Right. But one thing I did do with Icebox particularly was, of course, he's in prison, so who is he going to encounter? Staff.
Right.
And, one thing I get so irritated with stuff like Shawshank Redemption or Orange is the New Black and stuff, where all the officers are just depicted as bumbling or incompetent or totally corrupt and abusive.
Corrupt and violent and abusive,
Yep.
Right. And that's just not the majority of the staff. There's always a few knuckleheads.
But it's really, literally, it's a few compared to the many people that do this job, and they do it well, and they do it with respect and kindness.
Yes. I imagine after Grey's Anatomy, doctors and nurses were like, I am not fucking every one of my coworkers, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure that.
My wife loves that show.
But it's true, and it does. It does. Especially, it seems like correction guards especially have been portrayed over the years as being, like you said, buffoons and being violent and abusive. And,
you guys, a CPS investigator always goes in with a lanyard and a clipboard and is the most ridiculous, dumbass, like has failed every child ever, in every story. It's their fault. And I'm like, first of all, I don't wear those cardigans. Okay.
So I'm kind of asking a question out of turn, but what made you, from your experiences, write about someone who I guess is on the other side of the law?
Well, that's actually a very good question. So I think I said earlier, I've always been a reader of crime, true crime, and crime fiction. So I've always been fascinated with like gangsters.
Sure.
Particularly like the mafia and whatnot. So, my favorite movies are Godfather, Scarface, Goodfellas, Casino, The Departed, Wolf of Wall Street. So I've always found those stories fascinating.
Well, I think that's the thing, because I can remember as a kid, even though I had an interest in law enforcement, I would have been a relatively young teenager, like when I read The Godfather and some of the other, Mario Puzo novels and seen, so you almost have a fascination with that other side, I think, a little bit.
Right. And so that's what all my writing centers on, is just crime thriller. I've always liked to read about gangsters, so I started writing about them pretty much.
Sure.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of fun, I like writing it, a lot of the rise and falls and stuff, and kind of doing away with the romanticism and stuff, and showing people kind of the ugliness of it a little bit. But mainly my books are to entertain. If you, and I'm honest about that. Now, if you get a message from my book, and it changes your life and says, I don't want to go down this road, I'm happy for you. I'm glad I did that for you. I'm sure there's people that thought about selling drugs and then they watch Scarface and they're like, oh, no, that's not good.
I don't want to get my arms chopped off in a shower. So yeah.
Right.
Like, oh, you know. So like with Icebox, you know, when Ice is in prison, he deals with staff, and they're relatively neutral characters. You know, the most common character is the officer that works his cell block regularly. And the first time he meets him, he says, "Hey, listen, I'm just gonna let you know that, you know, do your time. You know, don't cause a ruckus. I'm not gonna hammer you, but just don't make me have to do my job."
Yeah. Okay.
And he says, okay, fair enough.
Right.
You know, and so the only time, a lot of times, the only time the staff are mentioned is when, like, you know, Ice gets involved in a fight, and then the staff flood the area, or when they show up on the yard because they have to take him to the hole because you know, he's under investigation or something, you know. Mm-hmm. And and then I'm actually working on the third book in that series as we speak, Ice Rain, which puts Ice back out on the street. He's now, you know, trying to put his family life back together, you know, reassemble his crew, get back to business, you know, try to get back used to life outside of prison. And of course, you know, it's not that simple because the gang leader that he answered to, well, he and them are having a couple issues with each other.
A little bit of a kerfuffle.
Kind of like, it's kind of
kerfluffle.
It's kind of it's kind of the exact opposite of. It's kind of like the exact opposite of Saul and David from the Bible, where like Saul was the king and David is like, you know, this like up and comer, and he got jealous and he like tried to do away with him. So it's kind of Ice is kind of in that situation, but instead he's like David, except he's the exact opposite.
I see. Okay. Mm-hmm. That sounds.
And
really
then,
cool.
But yeah, so that's my Ice series, and then I have two other books that I wrote. One was the Ballad of Johnny Carlo, which I had a lot of fun with because it's got a lot of mafia influence in it.
Okay, undertones.
Yeah, Johnny Carlo himself is a hitman for the mafia. He represents, again, not all my characters and everything represent something, but Johnny Carlo does represent that romanticism with crime.
Okay.
You know, he's a hitman, but he's got his own quote unquote code of honor. No women, no kids, no cops. But times are changing. It's the modern times. The mafia is changing with them. They're getting more ruthless, and they conflict with his moral code.
Oh.
He says, "You know what? I can't do this anymore. I'm done with the mafia." Well, it's easier said than done.
Not that simple.
So
Yeah.
So he ends up changing his name through some contacts. He goes down to New Orleans, gets a place to live, gets a job, and says, "Okay, I guess I'm a regular Joe Schmo civilian now." Well, while we're down there, we meet the second protagonist of this book, who is Leisha Abraham. Now, I've been talking about gangsters with my past three books. Now we're going to the opposite side. Leisha Abraham is a homicide detective in the New Orleans Police Department.
Oh,
and
okay.
She's everything a cop's supposed to be. She's smart, she's tough, she's dedicated, she's honest, and she's investigating these gangland murders in New Orleans.
Okay.
Now the problem is, so there's a gang war going on. Here's what complicates the matter. Her father, Frank Abraham, is the crime lord of New Orleans.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
the apple fell far from the tree.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
What made you pick New Orleans?
It was aside from the fact it's always been a place I wanted to visit, it was such a different culture shock for Johnny, who's, you know, this like New York City Italian mafia guy, and now he's in New Orleans, where it's just a whole different world for him down there.
Well, I was curious, and I was going to ask you about, you know, what authors that you like and maybe influence you, but I don't know. James Lee Burke, the Dave Robichaud Cajun detective novels. Have you ever read any of those?
Now you mentioned him, I will.
Yeah.
I was thinking the same thing. No,
definitely, just because, based out of Iberia Parish, New Orleans, and this guy was originally a New Orleans cop, and so James Lee Burke is the author, and that's just what kind of jumped up to me was kind of that similar thing, because I was always never been there, would love to go, but I've always been fascinated with how authors write about Louisiana and New Orleans.
Yeah.
So.
I wish Megan was here because that's one of her favorite places, and she's very knowledgeable about it. She's covered several cases from there. Yeah.
Yeah, I would love to go someday. You know, and actually doing the research on that book really made me want to go.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah, so like, you know, back to the story. So Johnny meets Leisha, and wouldn't you know it, they fall in love.
Of course.
Oh,
she looks great in a tight pair of pants. I get it. Yeah.
Right. Well, then Johnny finds out that the mafia that he used to work for has their sights set on New Orleans, and Leisha's in their way.
Oh, boy.
So Johnny picks his guns back up and goes back into the battle. So it's a question of will they walk up into the sunset together, or will they share a grave?
Mm-hmm.
And one thing I wanted to do with Leisha is because a lot of times, even when you have that kind of like action couple, the female is kind of like what's the word? Second chair to to the male protagonist. Well, Johnny's the anti-hero.
Mm-hmm.
Leisha's the true hero. And she is just as much tough as he is. And that's
which is an interesting twist.
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
Right. And here, and you know, I know I just said like 5 minutes ago that not a lot of my books represent stuff, but Leisha represents.
The more you talk about it, you're like, actually, maybe.
Actually, now that
she is like throughout the book a few times, the other characters kind of underestimate her. They know she's tough, but maybe she's dealing with a situation and she's in over her head. But I don't want to give it away, but there are quite a few scenes in there where you think it's like, she's in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
And then she ends up getting out of it on her own.
Okay.
So that's what I wanted to do. And I had a lot of fun writing her. It was refreshing.
It sounds like fun.
Hey, you know, I'm writing all these gangsters and now I get to write this about this cop who's just like the epitome of what a cop's supposed to be.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Very cool.
I love that. Yeah. Wonderful.
And then
go ahead. I'm sorry, I interrupted.
No, go ahead.
So who are some of your favorite writers, or that you took influence from?
Surprise, surprise, Mario Puzo.
Okay. Yep.
James Patterson.
Yep.
Oh yeah.
I really enjoy his, especially his older books from the 80s and the 90s. The unpredictability of
like the Alex Cross novels.
Stories. Oh my God, I love Alex Cross.
I grew up reading them.
With like those characters are so fabulously written.
Yes.
I grew up with his family.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yep, same.
Let me ask you this: were you disappointed when you watched the movies and it was nothing like you pictured him?
I have not watched the movie.
I'll tell you what, just don't.
Yeah, I'm not going to do that either because I loved it so much that I want it to remain that way in my head.
Because they describe him as a younger Muhammad Ali, correct, or older? At the time.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Oh,
which is kind of funny because I inwardly argued with James Patterson because for some reason I always pictured the Alex Cross character as like being like having a bald head and with glasses and stuff, but just being like a tough guy at that.
Yep.
I don't know. That's just how my brain works. I don't know.
I like
Maybe
how
it's
you
just
said
how
it.
I think
I
of the name.
inwardly argue with James Patterson.
Right.
Well, and I apologize. I keep interrupting.
No, he doesn't have hair.
Right.
I don't know why he doesn't have hair.
No, he doesn't for me either. I don't know why that is.
I don't think I ever saw him with hair.
No,
or in my mind.
No, he doesn't have hair in my mind. I think it's the toughness thing. Yeah. Like, I don't know, Bruce Willis, right?
Well,
like, it's just
as a fellow bald guy, we're
right. They're the toughest.
I'm getting there myself.
Yeah, oh yeah. So, what about some other writers?
Let's see. I read so much. Definitely Mario Puzo, James Patterson. Jonathan Mayberry's another one.
Yes. Which those are more, correct me if I'm wrong, a little more sci-fi-ish.
Yeah,
yes.
But one thing that Mayberry and Patterson do masterfully is that they create a hero that everybody loves.
Yes.
But the second great part of their hero is the enemy.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
These people fabulously just diabolically
Just
despicable.
evil. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so I enjoy like I you really want to see just the villain go crashing down.
Yep.
You know, you just can't wait. You're following them. You're just like, oh, I just can't wait till the hero takes you down. You're horrible. It's
Right.
It's fun. It's fun watching you. You know, whatever. It's enjoyable watching you be despicable, but when it comes down to it, you know, when you go down, I'm going to enjoy that part.
Right.
What about Elmore Leonard?
I don't know him.
I don't know him either.
Get Shorty, Be Cool. They made movies out of it. Actually,
I guess I didn't realize that was based on a book.
Justified, Raylan Givens, is actually based on a character.
Oh,
okay.
I didn't realize that. Yep. Wow, Grandpa, teach us more.
Well, and you said that you were an avid reader, and I, as a kid, and even as a cop, and I mean, I'm 51 years old, but I have read mostly fictional crime novels my entire life.
Yeah.
Even doing what I do for a living, I still enjoy. And I will be honest that as I've gotten older, I probably have gone more towards, as you say, the anti-heroes. Mm-hmm. I enjoy that perspective. Mm-hmm. So
right. I would say one of my favorite nonfiction writers, but he's a true crime writer, would be T.J. English.
Yeah, I have read some of his books.
Oh, I love his work.
Yeah.
And I may not be familiar. I might have checked some of those out.
So T.J. English writes about a lot of, he really picks some interesting topics to cover when it comes to, so he writes a lot of books on organized crime. Like he wrote Havana Nocturne, which talks about the mafia's, their role in Havana before Castro took over. He talks about, he wrote this book about the corporation, which was about the Cuban mafia here in America. He wrote, what is it, Born to Kill, which was about it was a Vietnamese street gang that was like responsible for all these robberies. But of course, I think my favorite book he wrote, I haven't read all of his, this is my favorite one that I've read, was Paddywhacked, which was the rise and fall of the Irish mob, which was before the mafia.
Right. Okay. Paddywhacked.
Yeah, I haven't. I'm going to have to check that one out. I haven't seen that one.
That title makes me laugh. I'm not going to lie.
It does me too. That's what it draws me in. Like, that's why I'm like, I've got to read that.
But Paddywhacked. Okay.
Because Paddy is actually a term used for Irish people. So it's like, Paddywhacked.
Yep.
Paddywhacked. Yeah.
Yeah. I like that. I really love that play on words.
I'll have to read that.
For sure. So where can our listeners find your books?
They can find all my books are available on Amazon.
Okay.
And actually, you know what? I did have one more. I have one more book before reading.
Yep. Please do. Yep.
Yes, definitely. So the last book that I published, Lifestar Corners. Again, this was me pushing myself because this is actually a collection of short stories.
Oh, okay. Wow, you really have a big array of, like, you're trying out different things. I really like that.
Yeah. Well, what I did with that was, and thank you, by the way, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
One thing I did with that was a few years back, there was this anthology, these people that were looking for short stories for an anthology. And it was kind of like a contest. And I submitted a story. They ended up not taking it. But I said, okay, you know what? If that's not going to get accepted, I'm just going to make my own collection of short stories.
Yeah.
There you go.
So, yeah. So I
Why play by their rules? Yeah.
Exactly. And this was a stretch for me because, again, like I like to write about gangsters and stuff. And a couple of the protagonists in some of those stories, there's 5 of them, are criminals. But I also had civilians in there.
Okay.
Again, I like to break the mold. And one of my more well talked about stories from there is called The Soldier's Widow, which is the second story, and it tells the story of this woman named Janine she's a widow, and unlike most of my protagonists, she is a law-abiding citizen. She's in her 70s. She is, she's a grandmother. She has grown children, but she finds herself targeted by 2 hitmen. 2 wannabe hitmen
in her 70s.
Okay.
And the question is why. Now, here's where I broke the mold with her, but I won't give too much away.
Okay.
She's called the so these two hitmen say, all right, we're going to take her out, easy money. Well, so Janine's husband was a Vietnam War veteran, and he had brought his service weapons home, and he taught her how to use them.
Okay.
Oh, dun, dun, dun.
So Grandma's kind of a badass.
Yeah.
Well, she may not be Charles Bronson from Death Wish.
Is it like Angelina Jolie from Mr. and Mrs. Smith?
I love that.
When you were talking earlier about your other book in New Orleans, I was picturing Brad and Angelina being in that couple where they're like badass together, you know?
Well, and not to spoil it, but with Janine is she, sometimes you have these people that live completely normal lives, but then when they're painted into a corner, they show
they can transform
what they're capable of.
Yeah. Right.
Well, with Janine, I just wanted it to be known that she's not a victim.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. She doesn't go on a campaign or anything that says, all right, you know what? Time to go to work.
Right.
She's not rappelling off of roofs or anything like that.
That's funny.
No, but there is a pretty surprising scene where it's like, whoa, didn't see that coming.
Mm-hmm.
All right, okay.
Good,
yeah. And
bust down your door.
how does it feel to create, like, I so know what you mean by, like, when you start these, you don't really necessarily know where they're going, because I very much understand that, like being a creator and then just surprising yourself, too, with like, hey, I didn't know that's where we were going, but here we are. It's like you're channeling the ideas, So
when you had said it earlier, but when you write or you develop a character, you don't necessarily have an ending.
It depends, because sometimes I think I do. Like, I thought with a couple of my stories that here's how it would end, and then when it got to the point, I said, "Oh, it can't end like that.
That's not going to work."
Change it.
Yeah, okay.
Like there are some times where I will give myself specific rules. Like, okay, this character, whoever in whatever story, this character is not going to die. Like, no, they will be it to the end. But this person is definitely going to bite it. That's why you wrote.
I'm not sure how, but they're gonna.
Yeah.
Like that's why I wrote you. So I created you so you could die,
right? So that I could kill you off.
You're a dick, and you're gonna develop. You're gonna die of a horrible death. I just haven't figured out how yet.
That's funny.
Right. It's either a bus or a building. Anyway, so
yeah. So, real quick question before we get to where we can get your books. I forget this, because I'm very curious. As a I'm assuming you guys probably do, and maybe you don't do it obviously as much as law enforcement, but do you have to type reports?
Type reports?
Reports,
for your job.
It depends on what happens.
Oh, sure, sure.
Okay, okay, so let's say there was a fight where a taser was deployed.
Right. Mm-hmm. You've got to articulate,
Yeah, you have to articulate. Of course, you have to articulate why you did it, but everybody else will have to file a report. Okay, so I hear there's a fight going on in a different house unit. I tell my partner, "Hey, I'm going." I run in there. I hear on the radio, taser deployed. Sometimes they don't. Just depends on the situation.
Sure.
You don't have to say it on the radio, but
right.
Anyway, so you run in there. Okay, there's two inmates laying on the ground. One's tased, the other one's getting cuffed up. I walk in there. I say, okay, the guy that's tased, I'm going to cuff him up, and I'm going to take him to the infirmary so he can get checked out. He was shot with a taser.
Right.
The officer with the taser is going to walk with us because the probes are still in the guy's back.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
I have to fill out a report.
Right.
Because I was involved in a situation where use of force was used.
And obviously you need that documentation.
Right. Now, and all you got to state is just what you did during that situation.
Yep.
I've done these. I heard there was a fight. I ran to such and such unit. I assisted in escorting inmate so-and-so, Joe Schmo. He's a very popular guy.
Yeah.
He really is. He's everywhere.
He's quite the troublemaker.
Yeah. Yeah. He went from being a real guy to being a fictional character to being a real guy again.
Right.
I assisted I handcuffed Joe Schmo, and I assisted in escorting Joe Schmo to the infirmary so that he could be medically cleared. I then escorted Joe Schmo to the segregation area, and that's it. You know, and
Sure.
I remember one time. And I can talk about this incident where an inmate had fallen out. His heart stopped beating, and I applied the chest compressions, and we managed to. We had to shock him one time with this AED. It's like a defibrillator,
Right.
and he was brought back. So hold on, did that? I think I did because I think his heart stopped, but I can't remember. I'm pretty sure they had me fill out a report for that.
Oh,
but,
sure, probably.
You know, it was said I observed that inmate so and so had fallen to the floor and was not breathing. I then radioed for healthcare staff to report to such and such unit. I then performed chest compressions at the rate that we're directed to per policy. And then I assisted in helping the inmate, the paramedics get the inmate into the ambulance. You know, and
Sure.
that was it.
Right. So the reason I kind of asked that question is I've always thought, like, man, it'd be neat to like write down some of my own personal stories about my life and all that. But as a law enforcement officer, I absolutely hate to type reports. So with you writing the books, I'm curious, how do you write? Do you write them on a probably not a typewriter, but like on a computer? Do you dictate them? I guess kind of a technical question.
I love how Wes is like, I'd like to be an author, but I hate writing reports for my job.
So where I live, I have a lot of rocks and I have a chisel. Actually, I use my phone. I have.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, I have an app on my phone that I use to. I found it and I was like, you know what? I'll write on this. And 4 books later.
Oh, okay.
That's amazing.
Can you share that
yeah,
app?
what is that app?
Pages.
Pages.
You guys have. If you have an iPhone, it's available on iPhone. I don't know if Android has it, but
I have an iPhone.
Pages app.
Pages.
Yeah.
Okay.
Pages. Yep.
So you basically like you talk, obviously dictate into the phone. It does it, and that works pretty good for you. I guess for
type it pretty much. It's like, you know, I pretty much type it, and yeah, I mean it's. I don't know. It's like I just started doing it because originally I was using my tablet, and then my kid broke it, so I was like, well, you know,
that's not gonna work.
I got my phone. I don't have a computer at home, so I said, all right, I've got my phone, which honestly has been very convenient for me because sometimes, you know, I'm off doing an errand, and I'm like, well, you know, since I'm waiting for this medication, let me go ahead and
put some stuff down. Okay.
Yep.
And how about that? You know?
I literally asked what that app was because I drive a lot, you know, for my job, and that is typically how I do my research for the podcast is I listen to audiobooks while I'm driving. And so when I'm stopped and there's something that I want to really remember, you know, a date or something like that, I jot it down in the notes of my phone.
Sure.
But if I had like something that I've always said, I would really like to find something that could put this together. Like I could actually have my whole case on my phone instead of having to have my laptop, you know, with me to put it all together. Just because I am typically doing my research in many different ways, not in front of my laptop.
Right.
So I'm going to look into that app. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, that. I'm definitely going to check it out too.
But that is fascinating to me that once again, you didn't identify as an author. You're working on your 5th book and from your phone at that. Like that is really amazing.
Awesome. Yeah.
I also wanted to point something out when you were talking earlier about the book where when Ice is in the icebox, when he's in prison, and you really have made the officers, the correction officers, you know, neutral for the most part. Do you think that it has helped you be a better, more efficient, or just, I don't know, help you step back a little bit from your role being a corrections officer when you in order to write that, you really have to put yourself in Ice's spot, right? Like in order to write about his experiences, you have to take your mind and think about how he would be experiencing what being a prisoner would be like. Do you think that might help you like in the long run with your job of just like having a bit more empathy for or understanding of what they might be going through because you've put yourself in that position and wrote a whole character's experiences of it?
That's actually a very good question.
That is a very.
I've never actually been asked that before.
I win.
I'll have to add this one to the list. That is a very interesting question. Man, I was not expecting that one. You stumped me.
I like it.
I'll say this: the way I've really kind of seen these guys hasn't really changed much since I've been writing. But I will say that if somebody else kind of picks that up when they're writing, if they are, become a corrections officer and they're reading my book, which a lot of my coworkers actually are reading my book.
Good.
If that does kind of change their perspective on it, then I really hope it does. And that's part of what I did with that book was to kind of one of my many strengths as a writer is my characters and kind of the relationships with other characters. So with Ice, throughout the series, he's playing this really balancing act between his life on the street and his life with his family, his mom, his dad, his brother, his sister, his relation, his girlfriend, his friends. And that, so that plays a pretty prominent role in Icebox. He has to maintain these relationships with his family via visits and, phone calls and stuff, and, trying to stay close with them during this time in prison. So, I mean, that is something that I kind of wanted the public to see is that, these guys, admittedly, they do have some stress being incarcerated.
Right.
And a lot of that is just being close to their family, being able to see them,
knowing what's going on in their
trying
lives.
to be a father to their kids, I couldn't. That's the one thing where we're like, I really don't have sympathy, but I can have empathy. I have 3
Definitely.
kids,
Right.
The idea of being locked up away from them, I mean, it's hard doing a 16-hour day.
Oh, sure, yeah.
If I do 16-hour days, it's hard sometimes because I miss my kids, I miss my wife, and it's like, want to hug them and stuff. And I can only imagine some of these guys. Some of these guys are doing life sentences, and they have a 6-year-old little girl at home.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. I like how you said that you can't have, you don't have sympathy, but you have empathy. I do think that sometimes people confuse empathy for like excusing someone's behavior. No, I had this conversation with my boys. Like, you can have empathy for someone who also is a creator of their own reality. Right. And you can see how they have created these problems for themselves. Right. But at the same token, empathize with how difficult that reality is for them.
And that's a huge part of what we do as law enforcement.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I really don't have sympathy, so I'm not going to feel bad for you, but I have empathy. So if you are willing to try to better yourself, I'm more than willing to, give you a little bit of advice as much as I'm allowed to.
Yes,
I'm not going to, I'm not going to, say, well, you need to move to Ann Arbor because it's perfect.
This is where you need to be.
But it's like, so how do I, whatever, get a job? Well, you have to fill an application.
Right.
Or if you're whatever, if you want to go to trade school or this and that, and this things like that, I'm willing, and I'll encourage you to do whatever, I read this book one time called Law of Success by Napoleon Hill, and it worked great for me. You should check it out. Oh, thank you. I appreciate it.
Yes, exactly. See, things like that. It's still not condoning what got them in there, but just helping them better
themselves. If you're really trying to make an effort, these are some of the things you should check out.
Right. Sure, I'll check the book out. Can you bring it in? No, I'm not going to bring it in.
Yep.
But that's not happening.
But you use your resources, and if you get it, I think you'd like it. Yeah, definitely.
Exactly.
Definitely. I just think that would, I don't know, kind of thinking from that perspective, I think that would make me more likely to want to read your book. And I do want to read your books, by the way. But I think just knowing your perspective of being in the corrections field and whatnot, like I would be interested in reading that and how you bring that all together. Because whether you realize it or not, you were bringing a skill set that you use at work into how you put yourself into their position. And I'm sure that does affect how you treat these people every day. And that's not a bad thing. And I think maybe more of us need to do that in our everyday jobs. So
definitely. And where can we get the books at?
Yes, back to that. So all my books are available on Amazon. That is Ice Rising, Ice Box, The Ballad of Johnny Carlo, and Life's Dark Corners by James Michels. That's Michels, because
yes,
Amazon likes to correct my name.
Yes, I understand. Try having the name Charnell.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Right?
Well,
right.
no, I mean it's a great name, but
no, I get it. There's struggles. And I'm sorry?
No,
I was going to say, make sure that you send me the links, because I will post all of the links to your books in our show notes of this episode. And when we do our posts on our socials, I will link those there as well.
Most definitely. Well, my website, I'll also have to send you that as well. I have a website. It's jamesmichelsbooks.com, and on there, people can check out my books. Of course, they're on there. I have my links to my social media accounts. If you want to follow me on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. I also have my email subscription. So anybody that wants to, stay in touch with me, that wants to get updates on my upcoming books, deals, events, just additional content, whatever, please sign up for that. Mm-hmm. And of course, my personal email is also there in the website for anybody that would just like to contact me directly, anything like that.
Wonderful.
And yeah, I'm welcome to it.
Yeah,
so all my books are available. All my books are available on Amazon for Kindle, Kindle Unlimited as well, and paperback. Oh. The Ballad of Johnny Carlo also has a hardcover version.
Oh, okay, wonderful.
Awesome.
Do you have any audio versions?
Not yet. I'm actually looking into making that a project for later this year. Actually,
perfect. That is wonderful. I actually considered just quitting my job and doing audio books for people.
There you go.
I'm like, got all this podcast equipment. Why am I not I love to read. Why am I not just recording
books,
myself reading these books for them? Right, exactly. Well, thank you so much for your time today. We really, really appreciate it, and I love your perspective that we have not been able to bring to our listeners thus far. So everybody go out, grab James Michels' books. They're out there. They're linked in the show notes, also with his website. Sorry, I don't know why I'm saying so much. It's been a day. So that's all there, and look out for our socials because we'll post his as well. So thank you again so much. Is there anything else that you want our listeners to know?
Happy reading.
There we go.
Right,
perfect.
Good talking
all
to
right.
you.
Yes. Thanks
and make
so
good
much.
choices.
Yes, exactly.
And make good choices. That we're
sure.
going into the summer months in prison. There's not a lot of, it can get hot in there. So,
there's it's hot and it's crowded, and just make sure that you make good choices.
Decisions. I like that. Good choices.
If you're feeling like you want to be a badass, just read these books and live through ice that way. And then you can save yourself from being in actual prison. So I appreciate that. All right. Thanks so much. Really, really appreciated talking to you today.
Thank you for having me on. It was a pleasure.
Yes. Take care.
You too.
Thanks. Bye-bye. Okay. And I guess this is how we just...
I guess that's how we end it.
Guys, yes, that's how we ended it.
I'm going to go home and check out the book.
Me too. I'm not, as you can tell, I'm not a reporter. I don't do good interviews. So I'm just like, okay, how do we end this?
Yeah.
All right. So now, bye-bye.
Bye.
Yes. Thank you all so much for listening. Hope you enjoyed this, and check out the links in the show notes. And until next time, keep it curious, keep listening. Bye-bye.
Bye.